Hi guys. In our second video today, we will be actually using the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation, which will help us find the roots of a quadratic function. Just a little review of that vocabulary from the first video. Okay, let's jump in. So here's my first example. Notice that this is already in standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. For quadratic formula, since we're plugging numbers into a actual formula, I find it best to identify my A, B, and C before I get started. That way, as I'm either telling myself the story or I'm singing the song, I can very easily identify what my A, B, and C are. So the A is the number in front of the x squared, which in this problem would be the number 2. The B is the number in front of the x, which would be the number 7. And then the C is the number, the constant number at the end of the problem. And so in this problem, that would be the negative 15. So please notice that I did not say any letters. I only used the numbers. And when it was being subtracted, I did make it a negative number. So those are going to be important while you're solving this. For our first example, let's go through the story. So the story says a negative boy, so negative B, couldn't decide whether or not to go to a radical party. The boy was squared, so 7 squared. So he couldn't get 4 awesome chicks. So minus 4 times A, which was 2, times C, which was negative 15. And it was all over big fraction bar, huge fraction bar, all the way across the entire problem at 2am, so 2 times A, which also happens to be 2. So here is the setup. On my next step, I'm going to do 3 separate pieces of math. So I am going to square the 7. I am going to multiply the 4, the 2, and the negative 15. Now that part gets a little bit tricky. So the 4 is being subtracted, and this 15 is also negative. Those 2 negative signs, the minus sign and the negative from the 15, are going to cancel out and become a positive. Now you do need to write the plus sign there because the 7 squared is being added or subtracted with whatever this number turns into. So you do want to keep the 7 squared separated from whatever this turns into by either adding or subtracting. And in this problem, it starts as subtracting, but it is going to change to adding because of this negative over here. And then the third piece of math I'm going to do is 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, so again, I did 7 squared is 49. 4 times 2 times 15 is 120. And the minus sign with the negative sign became a plus sign right here. And then 2 times 2 is 4. Now for right now, I'm just going to focus on the square root sign. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the 49 and the 120, which is 169. And then I'm going to break out my handy dandy calculator, and I'm going to see if 169 has a square root. Now, on some calculators, you have your own separate square root button. This one does. It's right here next to the x squared. Not all calculators have their own separate square root button. In fact, the calculator that I use most of the time, this one, does not have a square root button. The square root symbol is actually above the x squared. So what you would have to do is you would have to hit second. I should turn it on first. Second, and then hit the x squared button right here. And then it'll give you a square root symbol. So we're going to check and see if 169 has a square root. And it does. The square root is 13. If that turns into a decimal, that's a different type of problem. And I'll show you that in a different video. For today, all of our problems are going to turn into nice numbers. So 169 does have a square root. It is 13. Now at this point in time, I cannot do anything else with this big fraction. And so here I am going to split it into 2 separate math problems. In one of the math problems, I will leave just the plus sign from the plus or minus symbol. And in the other math problem, I will leave just the minus sign from the plus or minus symbol. So here's where we're going to get our 2 answers. And we talked about this earlier in this week. When we were factoring, we always got 2 answers. We will always get 2 answers from quadratic formula as well. When you're solving these problems, you do want to simplify the top first and then do the division. So I'm not even going to look at the 4. I'm going to start by figuring out what is negative 7 plus 13. And then whatever that is, it's 6. I will put it over 4. And for today's problems, I do want all of your answers to be either whole numbers or fractions, just like when we were factoring. So 6 over 4 is going to simplify into 3 over 2. For my second fraction, negative 7 minus 13 is negative 20, and negative 20 divided by 4 is negative 5. And so my two answers, and I put them in numerical order, are negative 5, that's the one I got from the red fraction, and then 3 over 2 is the one I got from the blue fraction. And again, I do want you to write it as a fraction, not as a decimal. Let's do one more together just to make sure we understand. Now, in this example, it is not in standard form right now. Standard form, we learned yesterday, needs to be set equal to 0. So I will need to do a little finagling to make it equal to 0. I like it when the a is positive, so I'm going to take the 9x and subtract it to the other side, and I'm going to take the minus 3 and add it to the other side. Remember, when you move something from one side of the equation to the other side, you always have to change the sign of it. So if it was a positive 9x on the right, it's going to be a negative 9x on the left. And same thing with the 3. All right, let's identify our A, B, and C, and this time we'll sing the song. So in this problem, my A is 6. My B is a negative 9, right? That changed when I put it in standard form. And my C is a positive 3. That also changed when I put it in standard form. Okay, so the song is x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now in this problem, my b was already negative. So when I said negative b, I am going to do a double negative, and that will turn into a positive. So the negative sign from the quadratic formula is right here. And then the actual number b was negative as well. So that'll turn into a positive 9 on my next step. Also on my next step, I will be squaring the negative 9. Now notice that I put the negative 9 in a parentheses and then the square is on the outside. So if you are planning on using your calculator to help you square the number, you do need to put your number in a parentheses, especially if it's negative. If you don't put it in a parentheses, you're going to get the wrong sign. Negative 9 squared turns into a positive 81. Next, I'm going to multiply 4 times 6 times 3. Now, in this problem, there was not a second negative symbol, so this minus sign in the middle is going to stay a minus sign. So on my next step, it's going to be 81 minus whatever 4 times 6 times 3 is. And then I'm also going to do 2 times 6, which is 12. So just to recap really quickly, the double negative made this 9 positive. When I square a negative number, I get a positive. And this needs to stay a minus sign. All right, next I'm going to do 81 minus 72, which is 9. And here I'm going to square root the 9. Please notice I haven't done anything with the outside 9 and the 12. I can't do anything with that bottom 12 until the very, very end of the problem. So you just kind of keep writing it until you're ready for the very last step. And this problem, just like the last problem, I do know the square root of 9. It is 3. Again, I'm not going to do any simplifying right now. Right now, I'm going to split this into 2 separate fractions, an adding fraction and a subtracting fraction. And I'm still not even going to simplify until after I do the adding or subtracting. So the very, very, very last step is the division. So do not do the division too early. 9 plus 3 is 12, and 12 divided by 12 is 1. 9 minus 3 is 6, and 6 over 12 simplifies to 1/2. So my two answers in numerical order are 1/2 and 1. If you do the minus 1 first, actually, you'll always get the smallest one first and the biggest one second. So I don't know if you guys want to always do minus first and plus second. I say plus or minus sign, so I have a tendency to do the plus first and the minus second, but it doesn't matter. This concludes our videos for today.